What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video. Today we're talking about the New York Giants in our season preview series, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton. If you're around here want to see more of this series and more football content in general, just be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. Tell me what you think about the Giants down below in the comment section. How many wins did they come away with? Who were some X factors, and what are some games you're looking forward to watching this team play? Love to have your thoughts. I responded to just about every comment, so let's talk about New York down below in the comments section. Lastly, if you're new to this series, be sure to go back and check out the videos we've already done. Maybe your favorite teams in there, some division rivals, or just want to talk some more football with everyone, and we'd love to have you. So let's start talking about the Giants win range, projected win total, and then I'll go position group by position group so you can get a feel for where I stand on this roster. 47 wins. So that kind of says a lot off the jump. I got them at 4-13. I may be able to give them another win when I do an updated win total. We'll have to wait and see there, but I think this is a pretty rough team. They just have some glaring weaknesses at some very important positions, not only for the game, but also specifically for their offensive defensive schemes. We'll kind of hit on that now. So Daniel Jones was quite the liability. I would say I'm not quite a Daniel Jones defender, but the first 4 to 6 weeks last year, he was better than everyone else around him for the most part. It was just unfortunate that, Kenny Golladay, that investment hasn't worked out so far. The wide receivers were getting hurt. The offensive line was just brutal. And the good play that he was bringing was immediately mitigated by everything around him. So hopefully that changes this year. I'd like to see him have a career, and it's kind of hard for me to imagine he's not. Specifically working with Brian Daboll, that just feels like a huge upgrade from, Jason Garrett and Freddie Kitchens from last year. So that feels like a big enough boost in my confidence to where I think he'll have a career year. But I don't know if it's enough to get him a long-term contract. No fifth-year option picked up, so he's got to really show it this year. In the backfield, Saquon Barkley, a lot been talked about with him, but don't forget, maybe the best running back prospect since Adrian Peterson. Maybe not, probably not even maybe. Almost certainly the best running back prospect since Adrian Peterson. And the dude still has the talent. He's battled some injuries, but can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. Solid route runner. Can do everything. We just need to see him out there for the full 17. We need to see an offense in which he can shine and thrive. And, Brian Daboll didn't rely on running backs a whole lot in Buffalo, but I'd be interested to see how he, incorporates Barkley into the mix. And then the wide receivers, where do I start? A lot of them seem to be potentially on the move. So, hopefully that isn't the case, but we'll have to see. Someone like Kadarius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, totally on the move. There's even been rumors about Kadarius Toney, who, looked so good in that Cowboys game last year. But that was pretty much a bulk of his production, but I still am a big fan of him. And it's interesting when you add him into this Cole Beasley type of role, maybe, working from the slot, where Kadarius Toney, a lot of what he did at Florida was running option routes and just had good chemistry with his quarterback, Kyle Trask, there. And, maybe with another offseason, him and Daniel Jones can get there. And then, depending on how Daboll wants to use it, maybe it is strictly option routes, or maybe it's just those twists that we see Cole Beasley make a living off of in Buffalo. So his athleticism is so unique, and he is such a twitchy player that it's hard to not watch him. And so I'm fascinated to see what role he carves out for himself. And then you kind of have to talk about it. Kenny Golladay, we'll hit on him later, so I don't want to waste everything now, but that dude's got to start playing like he's worth $18 million a year. And then the offensive line, you look at it on paper, and it's not all that bad. Shane Lemieux, again, we'll hit on that later, but that feels like the one spot where I'm like, okay, that's really the only thing that is below average as of right now. John Feliciano, we'll see how that plays out at center. It doesn't have a whole lot of playing time there, but Mark Lewinsky at right guard. Then you draft Evan Neal in the top 5, play right tackle. Andrew Thomas looked really good in year 2, especially compared to his rookie season. So hopefully that progression curve continues on to year 3. So there's things to be excited about for the offensive line. I'm not saying it's going to be a top tier unit, but to go from the depths to where they were last year, I think you'll see a significant upgrade from that unit this year. Switching over to the defensive line, the interior, Leonard Williams gets paid big money. We'll see how that contract extension comes back and hurts this team cap-wise. We're already seeing, James Bradbury in that deal, how it's, affecting the long-term cap situation, especially when, the old regime is there. Joe Judge is not the head coach anymore. So there's going to be some lumps to swallow over the next couple of years for the Giants, but I think Leonard Williams is a good enough football player to where they'll probably keep him around. I also really like the edge duo right now. Azeez Ojulari had some moments last year, and especially considering how he fell in the draft based off the injury, it was encouraging to see him, for the most part, be pretty healthy last year. And then now you go into year 2, and he has Kayvon Thibodeaux on the other side, who for some people was still the number 1 player on their draft boards. Dude's a freak athlete, and feels like a really nice fit for that Wink Martindale defense where, yes, he can get to the quarterback, but he's also such a good athlete. I don't hate him dropping back and primarily into flat zones, which Wink will do with his outside linebackers. Tyus Bowser made a career out of that. So I think, his fluidity in space kind of suits him well for that. But man, let him put his ears back. Let's see the bend. Let that dude get after the quarterback, and then have Azeez Ojulari on the other side. I like that dude. And again, Leonard Williams there in the middle. And then you get to the linebacker core. Tate Crowder's going to have to prove some stuff this year. We'll see how Blake Martinez bounces back after missing a lot of last year. So definitely some question marks there. But, ask the Rams, if you're going to be weak at one spot on defense, you could probably win a Super Bowl with a little bit of a weak area. The linebacking core, of course, that's changed. They now have Bobby Wagner. But then you get to the secondary, and there's things I like here. You have Julian Love, and I like Xavier McKinney, but that safety depth has taken a bit of a hit. They used to be able to roll like 4 guys deep. No more Logan Ryan. Obviously, no more Jabril Peppers. So, a little bit less, all in all depth there. But 2 guys I really do like with McKinney and Love. And then this corner position, Adoree Jackson, when he's healthy, is a good athlete and will stick to guys week to week with man coverage. Some weeks it's not always pretty, but then some weeks it's like, dude, there's Adoree Jackson. There it is. And he'll kind of find another gear, and he'll be kind of shutdown-esque. Darnay Holmes, primarily, I would assume, going to be the guy in the nickel. And then that leaves Aaron Robinson, this guy who was initially drafted out of UCF as this nickel corner, but has the size of an outside corner body. In Kansas City, that didn't really work well with L'Jarius Sneed trying to move him from the slot to the outside. Hopefully that transition's a little smoother for Aaron Robinson. We'll talk about that later on. All in all, again, especially for a weak Martindale defense, instability at corner is questionable. He also used a ton of safeties in Baltimore, so lacking that depth, And then young edge rushers, there's no guarantee it's going to hit the ground running. There's still some questions that need an answer. And then, of course, the offensive line, not great, but better. Offensive line, the wide receivers, they have a lot to improve. And then the Daniel Jones factor. So there's things I like, but a lot that leaves me wanting more. So let's move on to realistic goal and reach goal. They are what they sound like. So realistic goal, let's just see that offensive line improvement, right? So, let's just say we live in a, call it a realistic world where Daniel Jones is not the long-term fixture for the Giants, but at least if he struggles or shows that he's not the guy, but the offensive line in front of him is a lot better. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe we need one more interior guy because Feliciano wasn't there. Shane Lemieux, that's not going to be a guy we keep around and keep in the lineup for long-term. Okay, now we're just needing one position out of it. We got 4 out of 5 set in place compared to where they were last year, kind of with just Andrew Thomas. So, big time step forward there. And, again, I just did my inter-offensive line rankings. There's plenty of good potential options there in the 2nd, 3rd, maybe even 4th round. So, if you see the offensive line mostly come together, ideally fully come together, and you're feeling good about all 5 and keep them for next year, that's great. That's a step in the right direction. And then when you draft a young quarterback, presumably, or land a veteran, you feel good about the offensive line in front of him. Reach goal is, Brian Daboll sprinkles his magic all over Daniel Jones, and he has this Josh Allen-esque leap. You see the running ability. He's not falling down on the 10-yard line or fumbling it away. That's really, forget about the stumbles. The fumbles have really been the problem for Daniel Jones. That and some decision-making and throwing some interceptions. Those are all things that need to be improved upon. And, hey, Brian Daboll, whether you want to give him, Ken Dorsey, Jordan Palmer, or Josh Allen the credit, Daboll's got to be somewhere there in that equation, deserving of some percentage of that credit. So maybe you can do something similar. I'm not banking on it. It's low percentage, but not at the same time impossible. So that would be the ultimate thing. And if that happened and the Giants still went 7-10, but they could say, hey, we're one interior offensive lineman away. We'll retool the wide receiver room. Daniel Jones is our guy. Imagine if you were a Giants fan and 9 months able to say that. You would be over the moon. So that makes me think it's a real big reach goal because don't know how realistic that is, so don't get your hopes up. But, man, that would be – if Daniel Jones proved that he was the franchise guy and was just awesome that Daboll offense, that could be as big a win the Giants could get this year. So let's move on to X Factors. Normally, these aren't superstars. Maybe Kenny Golladay you would put in that group, but for the most part, these are players I consider 50-50. Maybe they'll have the high side of variance, and that'll help the Giants get to that 7-win mark, or maybe they'll be disappointing, and that's what keeps the Giants around that 4-win mark. So they're true players that I think could break one way or the other. They're not superstars. I expect Leonard Williams to be good. I'm expecting Andrew Thomas to be pretty solid, considering what we saw out of him last year. So that's kind of the breakdown for it. So Kenny Golladay is a little bit of an exception for this because most of my X Factors don't make $18 million a year, right? And, now you look at the wide receiver market and it's like, oh, that's not that bad. It's okay. That's what Deontay Johnson's new extension was. Yeah, I'd rather have Deontay Johnson after what we saw last year. And how many times have you heard the joke said, oh, as many touchdowns as Kenny Golladay? It's played out, but still sad that it's true. So, this guy who I loved in Detroit at one point led the NFL in receiving touchdowns. This just makes the zero last year even more, bonkers. But this dude was getting better year over year until that last year in Detroit where he gets the injury. And then last year completely falls off the table. So maybe it's, Jason Garrett's fault. Maybe it's just, New York was a complete mess under Joe Judge. Now there's no excuses. We've seen Stephon Diggs thrive in a Dable offense. Kenny Golladay better be able to do something that resembles that to some degree. And also, I want to make note, I know it's not necessarily going to be Dable's offense. It's going to be Mike Kafka as the offensive coordinator. I think he's been named the play caller, but Dable's the head coach. I mean, he's going to have say in what the offense looks like. And, even if it is Mike Kafka and completely and only his offense, talking about a former NFL quarterback and a guy who's been working with Patrick Mahomes day in and day out before this job. So, need to see a little bit more out of Daniel Jones, but also Kenny Golladay getting back on track here with our X Factors. He's just got to look like a guy who deserves $18 million a year, and he's got to be a threat and a factor down the field. Daniel Jones may not have the craziest arm in the NFL, but he's not necessarily a liability either. He can get the ball down there, so need to see Golladay be able to be an impact deep down the field, and we got to see him in the end zone. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, he's just, again, got to play like he's worth $18 million a year. Shane Lemieux, again, this is kind of the one interior offensive lineman right now, slated in at left guard, rookie. So it's also tough to put rookies in this spot, but man, if he hits, this is where the true 50-50 factor comes in here. If Lemieux hits, then it's like, all right, if Feliciano is at least average at center, you're looking at an offensive line that's average or better at all 5 spots. So that's really kind of the aim. And you're talking about 2 tackles that were drafted in the first round, and one who's going into year 3 getting better and better, and one who's a top 5 pick. So those should certainly be an above average. It may take Neil time, but I digress. Lemieux is the one last, potential weak link, and it's a weak link unit, it's a weak link sport. So if Lemieux struggles, be ready to see the Giants trying to search free agency for another interior offensive line option, or maybe even making a trade for like a super late day 3 pick, because they're going to want to see what Dable's system looks like, or Kafka's system. They're going to want to see what Daniel Jones has. So Lemieux pretty quickly could find himself out of a job, at least for this season. And then we get to Aaron Robinson again, outside corner size, but he played in the nickel, and part of that concern was hips and foot speed. A year in the NFL, maybe he can stick. And you look at him as a nickel, and at UCF, he did go at the line of scrimmage, and he went up and got wide receivers at the line of scrimmage, which is not something that you're often seeing. That's kind of part of the advantage of playing in the slot. But he has that technique to go get a wideout at the line and press him. So that's a really encouraging starting spot, especially for a Wink Martindale defense, where think about Marcus Peters, think about Marlon Humphrey and their skill sets. So to be able to do at least that's awesome. Now, I'll have to wait and see. I just got to see, does he have the long speed? Does he have the short speed? I mean, I just got to see how his foot speed and how his hips handle starting outside wide receivers. So only time can tell that story. But again, this is a true 50-50 situation we find ourselves in. If Robinson sticks on the outside, then hey, him and Adoree Jackson, that's a solid enough duo, and it'll work. And then you have Kayvon Thibodeaux and Azeez Ojulari, Leonard Williams, and okay, now I can be convinced that defense is, above average or so. But if he struggles, then this team's got a serious weakness at outside corner, because you're talking about needing another starter, but also Adoree Jackson kind of comes and goes with the wind, if you will. So, yeah, you're looking at potentially at least 1, but maybe even 2 corners for once this team's getting into their playoff and Super Bowl window long term. Moving on to games to watch here. No division games. Anytime the Giants play, the Commanders, the Cowboys, the Eagles, that's a game to watch. So these are all non-interdivision games. Week 2 against the Carolina Panthers, and one other last common thread between all 3 of these games. These are all teams that, maybe the lines are just outside of that, but these are all teams pretty much bottom barrel, bottom 8 teams in the NFL. So these are all winnable games in my eyes for the Giants at home against the Panthers. And there's these 2 teams where it's like on paper, like the Giants have talent at wide receiver. They have a first-round pick in Kadarius Toney, a second-round pick in Wan'Dale Robinson. I didn't even talk about, and a guy making $18 million a year in Kenny Golladay, Darius, Slayton, and Sterling Shepard. And then you go to Carolina, it's Robbie Anderson, it's a second-round pick in Terrence Marshall, it's the guy they just paid in DJ Moore. There's talent on the outside. They're just kind of waiting for the quarterback play to come through. Now, I would say I feel more confident in starting Baker Mayfield right now than Daniel Jones. So edge there to Carolina. But this game's in New York, so maybe that, teeters a little bit back in the Giants' favor. And they're both teams that have intriguing pieces on defense, right? Like Phil Snow did a really good job in games last year, maximizing the talent he had. And, there's things to like and be hopeful for Carolina's secondary. J.C. Horn, C.J. Henderson. How's that all come together? And the Giants, again, Aaron Robinson could be a breakout, bust on the scene type of guy. And Adoree Jackson, maybe he takes that full step forward and becomes a true CB1. Or maybe it's Kayvon Thibodeau winning rookie, defensive rookie of the year. All that's plausible. So lots of things to watch on both sides of the ball in this game. But again, it's a pretty even matchup. So we'll find out pretty quickly who has the edge there. Week 8 at Seattle, so a road game here. And again, teams looking for a long-term quarterback, some pieces at wide receiver. Feel a little bit better about the Giants' defense right now, both pass rush and secondary, all in all. So a little bit of an edge there for the Giants, but it's always tough to go to Seattle in the 12-man. So how does Daniel Jones handle that? Do they look ready? This is kind of one of those tests of like, hey, Daboll, you're not just an offensive coordinator anymore. Is your team ready to compete? Do they come out flat? So another interesting layer of intrigue to that game. And then week 11 against the Lions. I would take the Lions right now, but it is in New York, so that might, swing it a little bit into the Giants' favor. But the Lions are getting to a spot where I'm not saying they have a Super Bowl roster outside of Jared Goff, because Jared Goff's been to a Super Bowl on a Super Bowl roster, so it's not quite that good. But man, the Lions are starting to get there, man. You're starting to see it come together, and of course they're on Hard Knocks. People are falling in love with Dan Campbell and the Lions, all in all. And the Giants a little bit further behind in that rebuild process because it pretty much started this offseason, right? But both sides looking for their long-term quarterback, wide receivers. The Lions do have a big edge when it comes to the offensive line. I feel really good about that unit. So this would be interesting. What does Kayvon Thibodeau look like against, a Taylor Decker or Penei Sewell going into second year, or Zizo Jalari, same thing about those guys. So there's some interesting one-on-ones, and maybe on paper the whole entire game isn't all that interesting, and maybe by the time we get to 11, this is kind of one of the more boring games, but there's still one-on-one matchups here that are kind of fascinating. How does Adoree Jackson, assuming he's got Jameson Williams as the number 1 assignment, what's that battle look like? I just want to see that. So more so the one-on-one level that brings my intrigue for the Giants-Lions matchup in Week 11. But those are my games to watch, and that's going to do it for my New York Giants season preview video. Tell me what you think about this team down below in the comment section. How many wins do you think they get? Who are some X factors, not superstars, please, but X factors, and some games you're looking forward to watching them play. Love to have your thoughts, and I respond to just about every comment. So let's talk about the Giants down in the comments section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton. And if you're new around here, want to see more sports content, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.